Welcome to Outside the Box, a podcast where we unpack the impact of business relationships. I'm Vanessa Griffiths,
And I'm Olivia Villalta.
and today we are talking about our first customers and how we built relationships with those customers. Um, I think that for any new business, the idea of getting that customer number one can be very intimidating. And a lot of the work that we did to get our first customers was very much about building relationships and trust. So let's talk about it. Um, let's kickstart kind of our target audience, who we identified as our target market, why we identified that market. Do we wanna talk about that a bit?
Sure. So, with starting a business a few weeks or officially launching the business a few weeks after the um, pandemic started, with the stay-at-home orders and no one working in office anymore, our target market or our target customer, we were always going B2B, but I guess who we were going after shifted slightly, and we talked about that on one of our previous episodes. So we tried to think about who might need our custom gifts right now and who's trying to build a relationship that couldn't because of the pandemic. So we landed on private financial advisors. And the other one that we landed on quickly soon after was consulting firms, specifically tax consulting firms. It was tax season. One of my best friends was going through hell working a tax season, and my sister had worked at tax firms, and I just knew the burnout that comes with tax season at these firms with working like 80-hour weeks. So we said, can we do something a little more niche, a little more unique, and do tax season survival gifts? So really narrowing in on two specific target customers, private financial advisors and these tax consulting firms. That's where we started.
Yes. I think our first, custom order at any volume really was tax season survival gifts. And let's talk about the approach that we took to finding those first customers. Initially, we thought that selling one-off gifts would be a way to gain the trust and get on the radar of these companies who might be buying one-off gifts for somebody's birthday or for somebody who's having a baby. And then with the intention being that if they bought a gift from us once, they might think of us again when it's time to send 500 gifts. Um, but volume was always our end goal. And so the first high volume gift was, yes, a tax season gift for a company based here in Ottawa.
And not someone that we knew.
No,
Like, we
no.
found that customer, which I think was a very rewarding feeling of,
Yes,
okay, someone's not buying this because they feel bad for us
yes.
and they're like just trying to support Olivia and Vanessa. Someone felt like there was a need and we were filling that need.
Yeah. So let's talk about what we did to find those customers. As soon
Yes.
as we decided on a target,
Mhm.
we went ballistic on LinkedIn.
Yes. I would say before LinkedIn, like Vanessa was saying, when we were initially trying to sell B2B, but individual gifts, I spent so much time on Facebook. I'm still
True.
currently in every neighborhood mom and dad group, like Stittsville moms, Barhaven moms, Nepean moms, Westboro moms. And you definitely have to like put in some fake addresses to get accepted into the groups because they are strict.
No, the
Um,
admins are about to boot you out of there.
Exactly, but there's some interesting stuff. If anyone is wondering, join their neighborhood mom and dad group.
I literally could never.
There's
I
some
don't wanna
tea.
know.
No, it's great. But I would watch for anyone that was posting asking about something, and then I would post, what our business was. Probably like 35% of the time it would get deleted because
No promo?
no promo,
Mhm.
but you post it and see how long it can stay up there. So, Facebook groups were a big first way of getting the word out, and it actually did work. Like, it just isn't the volume that we ended up looking for,
Right.
but in terms of those one-offs, it was, like, a great way to kinda get some initial people
Mhm.
knowing what our business was.
And in the beginning, eyeballs are eyeballs. You
Exactly.
can think that you know who your target market is, but being open to letting people show themselves as your target
Mhm.
market is huge. Um, so I'm glad that we did that. It also kind
100%.
of validated that that was not our target market, which was helpful as well.
Yep. We had launched since early on give back campaigns where we would
Right.
give people an opportunity to buy a gift at cost, no markup. We would do the labor of like the packing, the delivering these gifts to people. Some of those things would be, let's say,
We did them for the Australian wildfires. That was
yep,
the first one that we did. I think that was happening in tandem with the tax season gifts.
yes, yep.
So that was what we kind of were what we were likely promoting in those groups.
Exactly, and, so in that gift, we had, like, a custom coaster with a little koala bear on it and some other items, so people could buy the items, and then all the money was donated to, I think the Red Cross, Australian Red Cross or something like that.
Or WWF,
You're right, yeah, yeah, that
Australia.
one was WWF. So, in those Facebook groups, I used that as an opportunity to promote the give back campaigns where I'm not selling something, it's that donation, but then it's also exposure to a potential customer.
People work.
Exactly, people have jobs. So after realizing that, like, Facebook probably isn't where I'm gonna find the high volume people, and I can't target based on job title, um, I added hundreds of people on LinkedIn, um, where I would search by job title, find people that worked at consulting firms in tax teams that were partners, and really just narrow in, add everyone once they accepted, mass send messages, follow up on those messages,
Mhm.
and eventually got a reply back saying that someone was interested in tax season survival gift. I think at the time we made that's probably where our, like, digital mock-up started of gifts. I think I remember having a digital mock-up of items in a gift, and we
Yes,
sent that
we
as, like,
did.
"Here's an example of what you can send for tax season." Um, Honestly, that might have been, like, "Here's what you can send," rather than, like, a, "Here's an example." I don't think we were as custom as we are
Yeah,
now.
it was like, "This is what we made. We can put your logo on it."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
cool. So how let's talk about the biggest barrier to finding our first customer. What was that in your from your perspective?
Biggest barrier.
Or, like, the biggest challenge when it came to finding that first customer? I can tell you what I think. Well, I mean, if you look at the numbers, I'm sure you messaged hundreds of people to find one that
Mhm,
said yes. So it's just the volume,
mhm,
and I think that that exercise, like, doing that in the beginning is so important because you need to do the sales and
mhm.
get used to the not even rejection, just the crickets
Yeah,
that come with you
yeah.
pitching what you feel is a great idea to somebody who you think aligns with your target customer and hearing nothing back,
Mhm.
and then just getting over it and still doing it and still
Yeah.
doing it and catching that one.
Mhm. I had one of our friends say, um, "Sell your first $500,000," which
Ooh.
feels like a very big number, and it was intimidating, but I'm happy that we did that because
Mhm.
it allowed me to really understand what our customers were looking for, have the discovery calls with them, know, like, "Okay, what's actually important to these people?" We thought that something that was our entire differentiator ended up being a cherry on top, and it was a nice to
Yes.
have, and we wouldn't have learned that if we hired salespeople from the beginning
Mm,
that were just passing us pieces of feedback.
right.
So, I think it was so helpful to get that information so early on
Mhm,
and to continue to get that information as our product and service offering evolved.
mhm,
Um, from a sales process perspective, we were able to develop processes that made sense for our business and started to understand, like, funnel metrics of, like, how many messages do we have to send out to get a reply, to get a discovery call,
mhm,
to get a sale.
mhm,
So that was super helpful as well. Um, what I would say the biggest barrier at the beginning is if you're selling your first $500,000, you don't have someone in theory to help with other things. And thankfully, we're 2 people, but trying to sell and do operations and fulfillment of those orders, um,
Yes.
was challenging just because we know how time consuming outbound sales is. So I would just say capacity was like the first year of a business is just a grind,
Mhm,
like no matter how you put it. And I think that's part of what comes with it is you're just wearing so many hats at the same
mhm.
time.
I think another big barrier that happens is you have this great idea and you have a solution to this problem, but you have no proof that your solution is the right one.
Mhm.
So being the first to sign up for a new thing or to work with a new service, like, you kinda almost have to know the person in order to take that risk.
Mhm.
So shout out to the kind person who didn't know us and took that risk. But, I think that that's a huge one too, is, like, people by nature need some kind of proof that before they invest in something, and not having that is
Mhm.
difficult. Thankfully for us, because we are or were, especially then, a very product-based business, we could at least show them products that we had
Yep.
made and whatever
But
before.
in terms of like what didn't go well,
Mm,
we never got that customer back.
no.
Like,
Well, but it's also because they were like, we wouldn't get that customer back because talking about, you know, figuring out our target customer, their budget was not aligned with what our minimum budget
true,
would be. Like, we
true.
wouldn't go back for that
Like
customer.
we made, uh, I would say subpar gift based on the budget that they
Yeah,
had, which we just couldn't do
we wouldn't do.
again.
If
Yeah,
they told us the quantity of gifts that they wanted and the budget that they wanted, we would have been like, "That does not make sense
true.
at all."
We
We
wouldn't have
couldn't.
said yes
Yeah.
again. Yeah.
Which is another step in, going through the sales process on your own, like, as we were going fulfilling that order, we're doing tying all these individual little ribbons,
Yeah.
and we're like, "Why did we do this? This is such a waste of time."
Yeah.
And it was a waste of time, like, if I'm sure we took I mean, let alone, like, calculating the cost of our time, but I'm sure that we took pretty close to a loss on that order,
I
which
would
is
say so.
totally fine because we got a really good testimonial out of it, honestly, and that was
True, we did.
yeah, we did. From a reputable company,
Very.
and we could use that for other tax consultants and financial firms, and that was gold.
That's actually probably such a big point to make is the relationships that you build early on. Making a relationship where someone knows that you're a small business and can give you the grace of like, "Hey, this is" maybe you don't have to say one of our first orders. Like,
No,
you can make it seem like you're
they can
still
assume that
they
it's
can
our first
assume.
order based on the fact that we have nothing on our website.
Yeah, they can assume. But having them understand that they're supporting a small women-owned business in Canada, like, and leveraging that relationship to
Mhm.
get a testimonial, I think is a big reason why we got customers after that, because
Yep,
now we have a great logo on our website where we can
there's
gain
credibility.
the credibility quicker.
Yep,
And I think that just keeps, like, snowballing as you get more and more customers, bigger logos, and now we have 6 logos and then 10 logos, and that just, I think, helped a lot.
mhm.
Um, we did some tax season gifts, with these tax consulting firms, and then I would say, uh, probably the first big, order from a relationship standpoint was, one of our first financial advisors that we worked with.
Aw,
He was so nice. I remember he wanted to go for coffee, which I was, like, so nervous about, and we went for coffee, told him about our business, and you could just tell that he was bought in on our story and our vision and, like, wanting to support us, which is so nice to hear when the person doesn't already know you. Like I mentioned, like, you're not doing it because of Olivia and Vanessa. It's like
right.
you heard our story and now you wanna support us, and, he was in the same boat where he needed to connect with customers in a different way and needed to build a relationship or keep building his relationships because he has people that are investing hundreds of thousands of dollars with him, and it's such a relationship-based
Mhm,
industry. So we ended up, I remember, like, ordering a custom stamp with his logo, and we would stamp every single box with his logo.
The stamps.
Us
Yeah,
I literally think we
we
still have
do.
it. Um, and he's still a customer to this day.
Yeah.
He ended up ordering, like, start of summer themed gifts for his clients and holiday gifts,
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. So it's nice to see those early customers that it's like, you weren't the first customer, so we kind of figured it out by the time we got to you. And now you've really stuck with us through like all of the iterations of our business.
Mhm,
Um, which is really cool to see.
mhm. We talked about the validation that comes with somebody from kind of beyond your network trusting you. Let's talk about leveraging your personal network for business, because I
Mhm.
think that that is huge and
Yeah.
has played a really big role in the growth of our business.
When we started looking at like what's our network and what people can we look with, I think we or work with, I think the first place we started is like where did we work in the past? Like
Mhm.
what business relationships do we have that we could lean on rather than personal relationships? I think that's probably where our biggest orders came from.
Personal
Was
or
no
work?
business.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's hard to differentiate
Mhm.
because the people that I would feel comfortable enough asking or, like, pitching to or whatever were, like, some kind of personal connection, but I happen to used to work for them with them.
I think that's where it comes from
Yeah.
is, like, how are you building relationships in every job that you go to so
Huge.
that it becomes a personal
For sure.
relationship, and, like, you can lean on those relationships
Yeah,
in
like,
a personal way,
exactly.
but the way that
Met
we met almost everyone that we leaned on in a personal way was through first a
career.
business relationship.
Right. Yep.
We kinda looked back at, like, who do we feel comfortable enough and trust enough to, like, ask if they have referrals, ask
Yes.
if they do gifting in their company. Um, those were probably the first ways of doing it. I would say beyond that, even, like, eventually having the nerve to, like, reach out to my old president and people that were a lot higher up than me, that I knew trusted and respected me in the role that I was in, and therefore would have, like, a trust that carries over into the business relationship with Gift Better Co. and, like, buying from us.
Mhm.
I think that was really helpful.
I think in the first year, we were still going back and forth a lot between the e-commerce store and high volume.
Mhm,
So it was easier to link the e-commerce store as one-off gifts. So I had worked in a consulting firm before, and so I had known a lot of people at a bunch of different companies, and I kind of had a feel for, like, my own relationship with them. So I would send them the link and say, like, "Hey, if you're looking for one-off gifts, but we also do custom." And that's kind of how it started, but by the time the holiday season rolled around after a first
1
year
year
of
in
business,
business, yep.
we had already worked with quite a few different companies for volume projects, and we could speak so clearly to the frustrations that our customers would be facing, or that the companies that we wanted to work with were facing, that I was really comfortable reaching out to, like, people that I used to work with.
Mhm.
So one of our first holiday orders was the job that I quit when we started the business,
Yeah, and
and
that was a
they've
big one.
a big one, and I think that there was trust there because my old boss knew that I was the one in charge of corporate gifting at the company before I left. I spoke directly to all of the pains that he was facing, which is why he delegated that task to me, and then I could articulate all of the time that I was wasting by making all of these choices, and so there was trust there from the beginning, um, but we also leaned on family, I think, as well, or I did at least. I think family has been a pretty big one for me.
I can't
Like, my
think of
aunt
any.
has been a client of ours.
Yeah.
She's actually, I guess that's it, now that I think about it. Um Yeah, our professional networks had, a big impact on the early orders. Um, like, we've had a handful of high volume orders that have come through as a result of, uh, people that we've worked with in the past.
Mhm.
But I think a bigger and more powerful tool in terms of networking has been just, like, going out and meeting people as the founders of this company
Mhm.
in different
Yeah.
professional scenarios, but not our careers, like, not
Yeah.
our past lives in corporate, just
Mhm.
going out and connecting with people. Like, our first dream client that we landed was because we happened to be on this workshop
True.
that we signed up for because we signed up for this, business incubator,
Mhm.
and that's how we landed our first dream client. Do we wanna
Yep.
talk about that?
Sure.
Okay.
So, what was that thing that we were part of?
That was part of
The
Startup
session?
Garage?
Yeah, so we were part of an accelerator program through through the University of Ottawa, and, we were in some sort of, like, workshop session, um, which I think had a breakout room of some sort, and when we were in the breakout room, we were talking to, someone that he didn't even work for Shopify. He knew an executive assistant that worked at Shopify, and he was like, "I love your business model. Like, can I have your contact information? I'll pass it along to someone else." So then he sent the referral over to someone else. I ended up having a meeting with her. She loved our business, but didn't need gifts right away. So it didn't actually even end up being her that placed the order.
Mhm.
And she dropped us into um, some sort of thread that all of the expansion packs or executive assistants were a part of. Um, and we just ended up living in that thread. Like, I think it didn't get deleted. Somehow people were able to, like, control F gifting or something like that
True.
because we ended up getting orders or inbounds from people that would say, I would ask them, "How'd you hear about us?" "Oh, we have this, like, channel within Shopify for expansion packs, and that's how I heard about you." And they didn't even know the person that was recommending us. They just saw this recommendation, and from there, that customer that would then work with us then put a recommendation when other people would say, "Hey, do you know a gifting company?" They'd say, "Yeah, I actually worked with this one." So now we had a referral in this channel that had worked with us before, that had a picture of the gifts that they did or an example of the project that they did and could speak a little bit more to what our processes were and refer us from there. And it ended up becoming one of our best clients, just working with so many different teams because of this one person that we met at an accelerator program.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, if I were to think back to what could we have done faster or better, I would say if there wasn't a pandemic, getting into more networking events, going to more conferences. Like, obviously, we couldn't have done that at the time because of the pandemic, but in terms of advice for people is, like, go to as many things as you can
Mhm.
to get your name out there because people are excited to talk to a founder. Like,
Yeah,
they wanna hear your story and how you started and why you started, and they will ask the questions, and they will want to be, like, an advocate for you,
mhm,
which has been so, so nice to see as we've built our business,
for sure.
um, and just, like, do that as early on as you can.
I agree. It's really interesting with Shopify in particular. Us getting Shopify as a client unlocked our ability to get Shopify as a client. Like, they were the first instance of land and expand because I don't think anybody at Shopify cared about any other companies that we'd worked with.
Mhm.
If Shopify had been the only client that we had worked with, that would have been fine
Yep.
because they had so much trust within their team. Like, "Hey, this worked once. Let's
Mhm.
do it again." We
Mhm.
trust them forever, and that's how it's been. They've
Yep.
been a huge returning client for us, and it's crazy because that was, like, I remember having a conversation well before we probably sold into any large business of, like, "What's your dream client? Like,
For
who
sure.
what's the dream company?" And it was Shopify, and we work with so many Shopify merchants already, we thought it would align so perfectly, and look at that, it does.
And that ended up being something that allowed us to learn more about what clients care about from a values perspective,
Mhm,
because before that, we were saying, "Hey, you can choose a charity, one of 6 charities to associate your gift with." And that's really where we kind of, um, probably thought the values piece stopped a little bit more, and once we started talking to more and more customers, we
true.
learned how there are other values that are just so important to a business and that they want to showcase to their employees or their clients. So for Shopify specifically, it was, can we have this gift support Shopify merchants only? Which is easy enough to do because there are so many small businesses on Shopify. But still to this day, that's something that's really important to Shopify when we work with them is, hey, let's really promote Shopify merchants with every single gift that we send out. And we were able to carry that over into sales calls with other companies of,
Mhm.
this is what Shopify does. They
Yes.
support Shopify
Yes.
merchants. What's important to you? And that's where we found, hey, supporting Alberta businesses is so important to us, or supporting women owned or minority owned businesses. So being able to add that as like such a big part of our customization process, I
Mhm.
think was really key. And I think we learned that from Shopify.
For sure.
I think something else that we learned from Shopify, was before that, we were really heavy into reaching out to financial advisors and, like the tax season, consultants or tax consultants. But what we realized is Shopify had this massive office presence, and
Mhm.
they had a chef, they had a slide that took you from one floor to the other, and like they had so many in-office perks, and when the pandemic hit, they had what we assumed was a lot of budget for engagement that they were using in person, and they had a big gap of this culture that they had built of
Mhm.
everyone wants to work for Shopify because of the engagement and what Shopify does for their employees. And I think that's where we first started getting into, selling into what's now one of our main, um, like, ideal customer profiles, which is like tech. Because we knew that with so many companies going remote, they were going to have to find a way to engage their employees in a different way and make virtual meetings more engaging. So Shopify was really that catalyst to understanding what the needs might be
Mhm.
with companies going remote. And that ended up just being a big part of what I think got us through the pandemic.
For sure. Right place, right time in terms of how we landed them. I
Mhm.
think that although we would have eventually formulated a strategy and pitched to Shopify people, I'm sure we had already at that point, but the
Probably.
way that the structure is at Shopify, you don't really know who you're reaching out to,
Mhm.
and there's so many opportunities for us to get in, like, it just so happened that that person had a direct connection, which was
Mhm.
incredibly powerful.
I think speaking to right place, right time,
Mm,
it's less about luck and more about, like, put yourself in as many places as you can, and
absolutely.
then the right place, right time will happen.
Yeah, it's about being in a lot of places and hoping that the timing works out.
Mhm.
I think that that has been the story of our lives in terms of the business is like,
Definitely.
"Oh, we're just here." And
This opportunity happens to be in front of us right now. How did we get here?
yes, that has been huge.
Mhm.
There's actually been so many stories of that.
I know.
Okay, I'm gonna tell the story of how we landed a dragon as one of our customers because that is the epitome of right place, right time, and just speaks so much to the power of showing up. So, Olivia and I got invited to a University of Ottawa event that honestly we weren't that excited to go to. I think it was very last minute that we got invited.
And I don't think we really knew what it was.
We had no idea what it was.
Mhm.
I barely read event emails, to be honest. I just look at whether or not I can attend and decide if I want to. Um, we talked about it a little bit and we're like, "Yeah, sure, I guess we'll go." So, we went to this event, which was way fancier than we imagined, right? It was at the Chateau Laurier?
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that
it
one.
was way
I
fancier than we
forgot
thought.
about that. Yeah, it was.
Yes,
Yeah.
anyways. So, Olivia and I go to this event that we were, like, medium excited to go to. Um, we for the first little while, it was kind of an open cocktail vibe. So we were just walking around looking at the art that was there, talking to a few of the people who had been in, Startup Garage with us, and also talking to a lot of the faculty because we had known them quite well at that point because we've worked with U Ottawa so much over the years, whether it's through their different incubators and accelerator programs or from a client, customer standpoint. So somebody, bless their souls, at on the U Ottawa staff asked, "Hey, do you want to meet Wes Hall?" Which for me is so exciting. Wes Hall was the first Black dragon on Dragon's Den Canada, and is so cool, and I love his story so much. So Olivia and I were so excited to meet him
And so
potentially,
nervous.
and also so nervous. That was very much sprung on us. We go to this smaller room where people were just crowding around this man, which Olivia and I kind of did not want any
Not
part
our
of.
vibe.
It was very much part of me was still like, I don't wanna be around that close to people in general, COVID. Um, Also, I don't wanna be a part of the swarm that
He
is
seems bothered. Like,
well, no, he
he
did not seem
he he
bothered.
didn't seem bothered, but, like, it seems like if I were him, I would be bothered.
Yeah, I just don't wanna add to the noise of
Exactly.
that. So, the room is very small, there's the crowd that is encroaching upon him, and then Olivia and I were kind of hanging back, and there was another woman hanging back, and we just started talking to her because she was beside us, and we were just chit-chatting, telling her about our business because she asked, and we were asking her like, "Oh, and what do you do?" She's like, "I'm Wes's assistant." We're like,
No, wait. Before that, she didn't say she was Wes's assistant. We,
"No, she
like,
didn't."
became friends with her, asked her all about this, talked about traveling, talked about, like,
Oh,
all of
yes.
her interests.
She had said that she had just moved from LA, and when
Yes.
we mentioned that we did a gifting business, she's like, "Oh, that's so cool. I know a lot of really good gifting companies out in LA, but they do, like, the Grammys, and they're way too expensive for what I need to do in my day-to-day, and I just moved back to Toronto, blah, blah, blah." And then it escalated into, "What do you do for work?" And she said, "Oh, I'm Wes's assistant." We're like, "That is so cool."
Stress.
And then we're like, "That is so cool. How long have you been doing that?" Whatever, just kinda chatting, and then she's like, "I really wanna introduce Wes to you 2. You have such a great story." And we're like, "Okay." And then as she was saying that, somebody announced, like, "Wrap it up. We have to go to the talking part," whatever.
'Cause at this point, we were in a meet and greet room that was upstairs, and then we went back downstairs to the gala
Main
cocktail
reception kind of area.
cocktail hour. So we were like, "Okay, we missed our opportunity.
Yeah, so we missed
That's
our
fine.
opportunity.
We're not gonna meet him."
Yeah, so we didn't meet the dragon. We went back downstairs to the reception area where we were again looking at art, talking to people that we knew, and Wes's assistant came running up to us at some point, just kinda popped up behind us and was like, "Hey, I wanna introduce you to Wes." And we're like,
And
"Oh,
she's almost, like, pulling him over
yeah,
to
yeah,
us.
yeah." We we were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, don't worry about it," like, trying to be casual and also sweating. And then she disappeared and came back 30 seconds later, yanking this man behind her, like, "Hey, I want you to meet these 2." And then there he was, and it was terrifying and shocking. So, we started talking, he was like, "What do you do?" We let him know about our business, we gave him the whole spiel. He started asking very in-depth
Oh,
questions,
yeah.
like,
Profit margin.
yeah, revenue, GM, how's it going? Do you have employees? How long have you been around? We knew them all miraculously, which is so crazy. We were low key on Dragon's Den in that moment. We knew all of the answers, and he said, "You should be on the show."
And
And
we said, "We've
no,
thought about it, and we've decided no. We don't wanna be on the show. Absolutely not."
thank you, but no thank you. And to be honest, Olivia and I had actually thought about it quite a
Yeah.
bit, and
We, like, fully looked into applying.
of course, and we knew that applications were closing soon for that season.
We did. We literally knew when they were closing.
We're like, "I think it's too late."
Yeah.
But anyways, he's like, You should definitely do it." And we're like, "No, it doesn't really work for us. Nobody none of the dragons really align with our business, and we wouldn't really benefit that much from being on TV because we're B2B." He's like, "Eyeballs are eyeballs." I was like,
I'm on it.
"True." He's like, "Do it." I was like, I don't know." He's like and then he asked his assistant to make sure that she connects us with producers,
Yep.
and then he
He said
said
he loved our story. He was so impressed that we knew our numbers, that we were on our shit.
and then
We were young women
he said,
founders.
"You need to do it."
You need to do it.
And we said, "Maybe."
That's actually we didn't say yes.
Honestly, we said, "Maybe,"
Maybe.
and then I said, "If we go on there and look like idiots, this is on you, buddy." And
You did say that.
he's
Yeah.
like, "Okay."
Yeah. You're like, "Are you coming to our rescue when we get torn apart?" He's like, "Fine."
He was very, tolerant of our annoyingness. Anyways, so we left that conversation giddy, obviously, um, stressed, and then Olivia and I had a few days of ping-ponging around whether or not we were gonna actually do it. Long
Mhm.
story short, we decided to audition after it had closed.
Yep.
So we met with the producers, we did our little mock thing,
Mm.
and it went okay, but we never heard back.
You can tell that they took the meeting because Wes had told them to take the meeting. Because in the meeting, she was like,
You really have to sell
the
me on it so that I can sell the team.
yeah, she's like, "Because applications are done.
Like,
Like, we're at the end."
they started filming in 2 weeks after.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were kind of like, "Whatever, we'll do it so that we can say that we didn't chicken out." I don't know if we had had more time, if we would have done it. Like,
If we weren't, like, forced to just, "We need to get this done
no,
right
no, no,
away."
I mean, like, if there was if it was earlier in the auditioning process for
Mhm.
everybody, would we have done it knowing that there was more of a chance that we would have gotten on it?
I think we would have because we at that point, like, we met Wes, he told us, he connected us to the producers. We're not that chicken. We're like, "'Kay,
Yeah,
an
yeah, yeah.
opportunity is
We'll
in
freak
front of
out,
us. We need to
but
do
we'll
it."
do it.
Yeah.
That is very much Olivia and I's entire brand, is like, "We are gonna panic about this. We might cry a little.
We'll just do it
We don't
anyways.
wanna do it. We're gonna be trying not to puke, but we're gonna do it."
Yeah. We'll
That
do it.
is our life.
Mhm.
Anyways, so that was our first meeting with Wes.
The story does not end here.
No.
Should we tell the second part?
The second part involved a lot of tears.
Oh my god, real tears
No, that
from
was real
you.
tears. I'll cry again.
Okay. Part 2 of how we met Wes from Dragon's Den again. How how the fact that this happened again is crazy in the first place.
Hang on, before we do that, we
Mhm.
should say, like, our relationship with Lindsay, the assistant at the time, was such a key,
Mhm.
part of this story. So after we connected with Lindsay following that event, she connected us with the producers, but we also followed up with her quite a bit about holiday gifting for clients and what
Mhm.
Wes or what her team had planned on doing. We also sent her a gift
Mhm.
to say thank you so much for introducing us because you absolutely did not have to do that.
We
And
followed
also,
each other on Instagram.
yeah, we follow each other on
We were friends.
Instagram. Yeah. Um, so this is another big takeaway for networking, whether you're trying to find a client or not, is please treat everybody the same.
Mhm.
Treat every person as a person and be your full self and be authentic and be ready to tell your story because you never know who is Wes Hall's assistant.
Exactly. I think that was probably the biggest factor of, like, what made her want to bring him to us is, like, she liked our story, but also how many times does she meet someone and people find out what she does and she probably feels used of,
Mhm.
like, people don't care about me.
Yeah.
Now I'm irrelevant because they just care about meeting my boss. And I think we spent so much time not, like, focusing on what she does and focusing on who she is as a person and getting to know her and, like, building that rapport and that trust, and, like, we obviously loved her, like, she was so fun to talk to, that then once we did find out, there was just more trust, like, we treated her as a
And
human and
we didn't ask, and we didn't have to
exactly.
ask.
Yeah,
She just, like, saw alignment and did that for us, which was lovely.
which we are so grateful for.
Yes. So we ended up following up quite a bit with Lindsay, asking her what they were doing for holiday, and after being connected with about 8 different people within that company and following up very thoroughly, we ended up landing them as a holiday client, which
Mhm.
was great. And I think we landed that before the second time we met
We
Wes,
did.
he just
Yep.
didn't know yet.
Yeah. Yeah, so we landed them as a holiday client because she connected us with the person that was in charge of gifting at their company, and they had a CEO, that ran either a part of their business or the whole business that wasn't Wes. So we worked with this executive assistant and the CEO on their entire holiday project, not with them not knowing that we had met Wes,
Mhm.
and with Wes not knowing that we were doing their gifting.
Right.
So that was a really cool one because they are a very high profile, super successful mergers and acquisitions firm. So the opportunity to just send gifts to the CEOs of these
Gigantic.
incredible, gigantic companies was so cool. Um, and what was even better is that it was a successful project. They were happy about it. And by the time we happened to meet Wes a second time, we got to tell him, "Hey, we actually
Are
you're our
doing the
client.
holiday gifts.
We're doing or we did I think we did your holiday gifts." And, I think it was a surprise to him, which was
For sure.
a cool experience.
So the second time we met Wes from Dragon's Den, I cringed thinking about it still. First, same vibe as before. It was like it started off so he was promoting his book, No Bootstraps When You're Barefoot, which I recommend anybody to read. It's fantastic. Um, Wes was doing a book promotion tour at a bunch of different colleges and universities across Canada, and he was going to Ottawa, so we went. Um, it started off kind of similar. There was like an open reception area. People were kind of he was standing in front of like a photo op like backdrop, so at least it was more clear like stand in line and approach. Like that was the vibe. Olivia and I were kind of, like, hanging back still, kinda got in line, but kind of let everybody get in front of us. It was I don't know what that was about. We were
We were
just so
too
passive
polite or
and
something.
weird.
I think we just wanted more time to think about, like,
What
how
the
awkward
heck
is
are
this
we
gonna
gonna
be when
say?
he doesn't remember who we are, and we
Yes.
need to have this conversation.
Yes, yes. So then finally we got up and he was like, "I remember you 2." I was like, "Oh, thank God." I was like, "Yeah, hey,
Yeah.
how's it going?" And he's like, "Still making money?" I was like, "Yeah, we are." And he's like, "That's great. How did it go?" I think he might have asked how it went with the producers, and we're like, "Ah, it was too late, blah, 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 whatever." And then I said, "Last time we spoke, you got us thinking a lot about investment because you had us thinking about Dragon's Den, and now we're thinking of taking that path a little bit more seriously than before. We'd love to talk to you more about it because we don't really know what we're doing. What's the best way to get in touch with you?" He said Instagram, which he probably doesn't know, but his Instagram, you cannot DM him, which is
No,
fair. So I wrote this oh,
you are missing a big part of the story.
I know.
A big part of the story.
Okay, so I said, "Okay, cool. I'll message you on Instagram. Bye." And he said, "Make sure." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "My people will answer and follow up." I said, "Okay." So then the reception part closed out. Then it was a fireside chat about his book, which Olivia and I were sitting in the front row for some awful reason. But thankfully, in the very front and off to the side, so most other people couldn't see me blubbering like I I can't even explain how much I was crying. It was ew. Anyways, so he's telling his story and talking about all of the hardships that he's overcome, which many of them resonated with me on a personal level. Many of them I just like was thinking about my partner and my son and so many people that I know and love who face similar challenges. Like his story is so so many aspects of his story are so common among so many people, and I was just falling apart. It was bringing up so many thoughts about the Black Lives Matter movement and that time in particular. I was, like, pregnant with my son and going through so much internally. So I was blubbering like an idiot in the front row. It's crazy. I was crying so much, and because it was in the front row, he was, like, looking at me crying, and I was like, "I hope this isn't as weird as I know it is."
No, wait, you stopped crying, you got it together, you stopped crying, and then they said, "Does anyone have any
Why
questions?"
did I
I
do
think
that?
at this point, he hadn't seen you crying, probably because he was just distracted by the questions. You put your hand up and asked a question, and no one could see her, but you knew how hard she was crying asking this question because she was fine. The first, like, 4 words, normal. 5th word, voice couldn't be shakier. She's crying asking the question. Then
Oh my
I'm,
god.
like, getting emotional because 'cause I'm like, "Now you're crying." And, like, obviously the topic was just, like,
Heavy.
so heavy, and Wes has a direct line to being one of the only 2 people that knew how hard you were
Thank
crying,
the
seeing it.
Lord.
So Vanessa asks her question.
Through tears.
Through tears, Wes answers. The event ends.
The
Then
event ends. So, I we got to the parking garage, and I was like, "You know what? We need to fire off this DM immediately
he doesn't forget
so
about
that he
us.
doesn't forget about us." I was like, "He's probably in a car on his way to the airport right now. Now is the time to send this email or to send this DM." So, I write this long message on Instagram basically saying like, "Hey, I promise I'm not as emotional in business as I was in that freaking talk. Just following up because you told me to message you and blah, blah, blah. This is
Would love to
a
get a
reminder of what
meeting
we
set up.
do. Would love to get a meeting set up." I send it, and it says immediately, like, "This person does not accept DMs from strangers. Kick rocks." So I panicked. Then we used our crafty
Started looking up all email formats to try and figure out what could his email possibly be, because we have no inkling. We found his email, which we will not
we
obviously expose
guessed
how we figured
we
it out.
guessed very well and found his email. So
Yeah, it
we
was
sent him
fine.
the message with the subject line.
Okay. The reason that we did such a crazy subject line was Vanessa was like, we need a subject line that if he's sitting in the car going to the airport, he's going to say, what the heck is in this email? Like some shock value. And this was the winning combo for the subject line. Shock value plus a connection of, like, knowing who it's from. Because there's no way he's gonna remember who Olivia and Vanessa is. He knows our faces, but we needed him to see, like, "'Kay, I know exactly who is sending me this email."
Yeah, that embarrassing girl in the front row. So the subject line was something along the lines of, "Nice to see you again. Sorry for crying."
Which is crazy.
Crazy. And then I just copy and pasted the DM that I had sent him and said a prayer and sent it. He replied instantly.
Like, within minutes. I wish we had the security camera footage of that entire, like, 20-minute parking garage
We were pacing
moment.
around, sitting on the curb like, "What do we do?
What
What
do
do
we
we
do?
do?"
How do we send this email?
I was
Do
like,
we
"He's
send
gonna
it?
get
We
to
need
the
to send it.
airport. We gotta go."
Send it now, send it now. Like, we were honestly, I feel stressed and, like,
Yeah.
hyper thinking about the amount of adrenaline
Yes.
we had, which is so funny because, like, no one that anyone else that's, like, probably not an entrepreneur is like, "Calm down, you guys are so silly."
No.
But we were in it.
We were
Like,
in
we
it.
were amped.
We were amped, yeah. It's sometimes I think that, like, if there was a video game of entrepreneurship and you had those little side missions, it would be so fun.
For sure.
And also because there would be less risk, like, you wouldn't be the person crying and
In
sending
the front
embarrassing
row?
emails. Yes, anyways, so, "Nice to see you again, sorry for crying." I sent the long little spiel. He replied so quickly, CC'd his oh, and I this is also a big part of the email, was like, "We're in Toronto often, so
I'm
let us
so
know."
sorry, Wes. We were not in Toronto
He
often.
doesn't care about that.
He doesn't
We
care.
were there when
But
we said we would be.
yeah, we were.
So, we sent the first email, he replied, CC'd his assistant, who was probably sitting in the car with him being like, "These idiots." And then
Definitely.
yeah. So she replied because she had to, and said like, "Hey, let us know some times and dates and times when you're gonna be in Toronto in the next little while, and we can try to plan something." Why did Olivia and I say basically every Tuesday and Thursday for the next year?
Every date. I
Every
think
day.
we gave
Probably 6 days,
yeah, maybe 8.
maybe 8. And, like, ranges, like, "We're gonna be here from the
This date to
13th to the 16th and the."
and this date to this like, she's like, "You do you live in Ottawa or you live in Toronto? Like, stop pretending. I know you're fake. I know you're not in
Yes.
Toronto."
So like, it took a couple days, I think, to agree on a date,
Mhm.
but we did, and then we just
Yeah.
had that date.
And we were like, "Damn, what happens if, like,
He
he
just
just thinks we're in Toronto anyways, has to cancel because he's a very, very busy person," and, like, whatever. We drove to Toronto to try and have a meeting with him. It is what it is.
And we did.
And we did.
And the meeting went very well. He brought in a few other people into the meeting to hear our story. He made us retell it again, which is great. He got to learn more about us in detail. Um, and other people within the company got to learn about us.
Which
He
one
made
person was his maybe director of strategy or some really strategic role. He used to work for one of the biggest banks in Canada. I am so grateful for the experience that we had to be able to just even get advice from such experienced, intelligent people in a room,
Yeah,
and he asked us some really good questions.
he did. He made us retell the story of how we landed, um, his company as a client because I think he was really impressed with how we hustled our way into the like, landing them for holiday gifts. Um, and he gave us some really good advice. The meeting was set for an hour. I think we were there for or sorry, the meeting was set for 30 minutes. I think we
Mhm,
were in there for over an hour.
mhm.
And
His
so
his
generous.
assistant came in at one point and was like,
"You
"You
have
have
other things to do."
you have another meeting." He's like,
Yeah.
"I know."
Yeah, he's like, "I'll be there soon."
Mhm.
He was fantastic. Gave us some great advice, gave us the nicest follow-up email.
Oh my
We need to frame
which
that.
I think we said we were gonna print and frame.
Yeah. It was the nicest follow-up email,
We probably cried when we got that too.
100%. I cry over everything. Um, and kind of said, like, "Use me."
Yeah. He's
You
like, "I
he's a
wanna be in your corner. I wanna support you. I wanna connect you to the people that you
Yeah.
need to meet, and, like, I believe in you guys."
Yeah, which was insane, and now we follow up with him pretty regularly. Um, we have conversations with his team. We've reached out to his team to say, like,
Mhm.
"We're going through this. Do you think you could talk us through it?"
Yeah,
And they've gotten on calls to help us kinda sort through what that looks like.
which was so helpful.
So nice and so helpful,
Mhm.
and now we have a dragon in our corner, which is kind of insane to think about.
That I still can't believe all that happened.
That is the ultimate story of, like, right place, right time, and also just being prepared at the right time.
Mhm. Being prepared for when those moments happen, and also which we have an episode scheduled for next week or a few weeks from now, um, on the topic of capitalizing on momentum,
Ooh, yeah.
which is, like, just meet the people, but be fearless, scared, but, like,
Do it scared.
do it scared. I think that's the biggest thing is, like, do it scared, and if we had been too scared to send the DM, and when the DM got blocked, too scared to send a embarrassing email, and if that like, that's so embarrassing to say all the things out
Hey,
loud
don't say
altogether.
it's so embarrassing, it was me.
Embarrassing for you. But, like, it's
It
I think
worked.
it also showed him that, like, we are persistent and, like, we will go get the things
Yes.
that we want and that we think
Honestly
are helpful to building a business.
honestly, I think that that was one of the biggest things that he, like, saw in us and liked about us was, like, the fact that we were bold,
Tenacious.
even though it didn't feel bold, it felt like we were panicking, like, driving up to his office, like, in the parking garage, we're like,
So scared.
so scared, but imagine we hadn't done any of those things, like,
Yeah.
one part of that falling out and it's
Yep.
we just don't have the story, which is crazy, so, yeah, I think
Do it scared.
do it scared,
In summary.
meet as many people as you can because you never know who is going to lead you to your dream client or your dream mentor
Your
or
first client.
your first client, exactly. Um,
I think that's probably a good place to wrap up for today.
yeah. Thank you so much for listening to Outside the Box, and we will talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.